He's not confused. He's comfortable. That's the part that most people don't want to admit. Because when someone isn't making a decision, when they're not moving things forward, we want to believe it's because they're struggling, they're unsure, they need time. That feels better than facing the reality that they're simply content with things as they are. Not because this is a perfect relationship, but because it works for them. When you're with someone who doesn't commit, doesn't move forward, doesn't have the kinds of conversations that show intention or effort, it's tempting to explain it away. We say things like, he's scared, he's been hurt before, he's just not ready, or he needs to figure himself out. All of those may sound compassionate, but if we're honest, they're also incredibly convenient for him. Because as long as you believe he's confused, you'll stay, you'll wait, you'll keep investing, keep hoping, keep giving more of yourself in the name of patience and empathy. But here's what's really happening. He's got everything he wants. He gets your time, your affection, your energy, your support. He has someone who's emotionally available to him, someone who gives, someone who cares, someone who shows up, and he doesn't have to do much in return. It's not that he's weighing whether or not he sees a future. It's that the present is already too comfortable. There's no urgency, no pressure, no requirement to grow, show up, or lead. Because you've taken care of that. You're the emotional engine of the relationship. You're the one always asking the right questions, creating the space for deeper connection, thinking 10 steps ahead. And as long as you're doing that, he can sit back and enjoy the benefits of a relationship without having to fully be in one. Comfort can be a powerful drug. It doesn't have to be exciting. It just has to be easy. And if you keep showing up, being loyal, holding on because you believe love is about waiting while someone figures it out, then you're giving him the perfect excuse not to. Why would he change anything when what you've created allows him to avoid responsibility? There's no cost to his indecision. And that's what keeps you stuck, thinking you're just one heartfelt conversation away from a breakthrough, one more act of patience away from him realizing what he has in you. But if you look closely, you'll see the signs. He's not making changes. He's not progressing. He's not confused. He just doesn't want more, not right now, and maybe not ever. Because the version of the relationship you're offering gives him comfort without commitment. He can dip into intimacy when he feels like it and withdraw when it's inconvenient. And every time he does, you rationalize it. You say he's busy, stressed, overwhelmed. You tell yourself he just needs space. But what he's really doing is managing the connection to maintain his own comfort, not building a foundation that supports both of you equally. People reveal what they want through their actions, not their words. He might say things that give you hope. He might tell you he cares, that he likes spending time with you, that he's not seeing anyone else. But if those words aren't matched by decisions, if you're not moving toward anything concrete, then you have your answer. He's chosen comfort. And when someone chooses comfort, they rarely choose growth. Growth is inconvenient. Growth requires effort. It involves stretching past fear, past habit, past laziness. But comfort? Comfort is effortless. It's showing up when it suits him. It's sending just enough messages to keep you emotionally engaged. It's dropping breadcrumbs of affection without ever baking the bread. So no, he's not confused. He's not lost. He's not on the verge of a realization. He's just comfortable, and he'll stay that way until something forces a change, until the comfort ends, until there's a cost to inaction. As long as he has the comfort of you being there without requiring more, he'll keep coasting because you've made it easy. And that's the trap. You think the issue is his confusion, but the real problem is his contentment. Not with the relationship itself, but with what he gets out of it without having to give more of himself. Your standards aren't clear enough. That's a hard truth to face, especially when you feel like you've been doing everything right. You believe you've communicated, you've shown what you want, and you think your intentions have been obvious. But here's the thing, what feels obvious to you isn't always obvious to someone else, especially when they're benefiting from not knowing. Sometimes we assume people understand our expectations just because we've dropped hints or shown them through our actions, but if we haven't made it unmistakably clear what we're looking for, we leave room for interpretation, and that ambiguity becomes their comfort zone. When you don't set a strong, clear standard, you leave space for someone to give you just enough to keep you hanging on without ever actually meeting your needs. You end up in this grey area where they're not stepping up, but they're also not stepping away. They linger because there's no pressure to do anything different. And because you haven't defined what's acceptable and what's not in a way that has boundaries attached, they keep operating in that middle ground. They can ignore important conversations, avoid defining the relationship, skip the effort because nothing is really at stake. There are no consequences. Your presence remains even when your needs don't get met. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if you just love someone enough, if you're kind enough, supportive enough, they'll rise to meet you. But relationships don't work that way. People don't step up because of how much you care. They step up when the space you're offering requires a certain level of commitment, of intention, of presence. If they can get emotional intimacy, loyalty, and effort from you without having to be clear about what they want, why would they change that dynamic? Especially when change requires effort. It's not that they're bad people, it's that they're human. And human nature gravitates toward the path of least resistance. If the path you've created asks for less and gives more, they'll take it every time. What feels like you being patient and understanding may actually be you compromising in ways you don't even see. You say you want someone who shows up consistently, who makes you feel chosen, who shares your vision of a future, but every time he goes quiet for 3 days and then texts you like nothing happened, and you respond warmly, you're teaching him something. You're teaching him that your standard isn't actually consistency, it's hope. Hope that maybe this time he'll change. Maybe this time he'll get it. But people don't change in response to hope. They change in response to reality. When the standard becomes the bare minimum, that's all you'll keep getting. Not because you don't deserve more, but because you've shown you'll settle for less. Sometimes we confuse standards with ultimatums, but they're not the same. An ultimatum says do this or else, and it's rooted in fear and control. A standard says, this is what I require to feel safe and valued in a relationship, and it's rooted in self-respect. A standard isn't about forcing someone to act a certain way. It's about being honest enough with yourself to walk away when someone shows you they can't meet it. It's about deciding what your life and your heart are worth and refusing to rent them out to people who don't treat them with care. When you get clear on your standards, something powerful happens. You stop over-explaining your needs. You stop accepting inconsistency. You stop making excuses for why someone isn't showing up. And more importantly, you stop staying in situations where someone's potential matters more to you than their reality. That clarity creates a shift, because when you truly stand by your standards, not just in what you say, but in how you act, people feel it. They see that the door doesn't stay open forever, that access to you isn't unconditional, that being close to you means showing up, not just occasionally, but consistently, with intention and with effort. But until you get to that place, the cycle repeats. He continues to operate on his terms because there's no clear reason to do otherwise. He doesn't know because you haven't shown that certain behaviors disqualify him from being close to you. He hasn't had to face the reality that losing you is a consequence of not rising to meet your needs. And if he hasn't had to face that reality, it's not because he's being manipulative, it's because you haven't made the standard clear enough to shake him out of his comfort zone. The illusion of potential is one of the most dangerous traps in dating. It's not just about who someone is right now, it's about who you think they could be. And that's exactly where you start to lose yourself. Because instead of responding to what's happening in front of you, you begin reacting to a fantasy. A fantasy where he eventually shows up, where he changes, where he steps into the man you know he could be if only he wanted it badly enough. You get attached to a version of him that hasn't even arrived yet, and you build your emotional investment on that future possibility instead of present reality. You see a glimpse of his kindness, a moment of vulnerability, a spark of depth, and suddenly you're convinced that underneath the inconsistency, the avoidance, the hot and cold behavior, there's something real, and maybe there is. But potential doesn't build relationships. Actions do. You can't build a future on what someone might do if they finally decide to grow. You can't build stability on flashes of who someone is at their best when the majority of the time they're not showing up at all. But when you're emotionally invested, It becomes easy to discount the days, weeks, or months where he's distant, distracted, or unavailable, and instead cling to the few golden moments when he got it right. You tell yourself that if he's capable of being that person once, he's capable of being that person always. And that's where you start to negotiate with reality. You justify things that don't feel good. You make excuses for behavior that would never be acceptable if it came from someone else. You tell yourself he's just not ready, or he's afraid of getting hurt, or he needs time to heal from his past. And while those things might be true, they don't make him any more ready for the kind of love you're offering right now. But because you're in love with potential, you overlook what's actually happening. You stay in conversations that go nowhere. You tolerate silence when he disappears. You forgive patterns that keep repeating because you believe that underneath it all, he's trying. But love isn't a rehabilitation center. It's not your job to fix someone or wait around while they figure themselves out. Growth has to be self-directed. You can't drag someone into their own maturity. You can't love them into being more ready. You can't hold the emotional weight of the relationship alone while waiting for them to rise. The danger of believing in potential is that it turns you into the emotional caretaker instead of an equal partner. You begin doing all the work, initiating the connection, carrying the communication, managing your own disappointment just to keep the peace, because you believe the outcome will be worth it, that one day it will all pay off. But if someone's not showing up consistently, with effort, with clarity, with emotional presence, that's who they are right now. And who they are now is all that matters, because that's what you're actually in a relationship with. Not their trauma, not their future goals, not their excuses, but their current behavior, their current choices, their current patterns. And if those things aren't in alignment with what you need, then it's time to stop negotiating with a fantasy. It's easy to feel loyal to potential because it keeps you hopeful. Hope becomes the fuel that carries you through the moments of neglect. You become emotionally tied not to what you're experiencing, but to what you imagine it could be if he just changed. But that version of the relationship doesn't exist yet, and you're paying a high emotional price for something that's still just a theory. Every time you choose to stay because of potential, you're abandoning your own clarity. You're teaching yourself to settle. You're telling yourself that maybe this is all there is. And deep down, a part of you knows that if he were really ready, really willing, really committed, you wouldn't have to guess. You wouldn't be constantly analyzing his words, reading between the lines, wondering what he really means when he says he's not ready for anything serious, but still wants to see you. You wouldn't be hanging on to the one time he opened up while ignoring the 10 times he shut down. Potential is seductive because it promises change, but promises aren't reality. Change only matters when it happens. And until it does, what you're left with is the emotional weight of waiting for someone to become who you need them to be, while slowly losing the version of yourself that knew you didn't have to wait in the first place. He's waiting for a reaction, not a relationship. That's a subtle but crucial distinction. You think he's keeping you close because he's trying to figure out his feelings, but what he's really doing is feeding off your responses. Every time he pulls away and comes back, every time he gives just enough affection to draw you in, every time he drops a compliment or shows up after days of silence, he's not doing it to move the relationship forward. He's doing it to see if he still has access, to see if you'll still reply, still engage, still care. It's not about deepening the bond. It's about confirming that he still matters to you. And in that dynamic, you become a mirror for his ego instead of a partner in love. A relationship built on emotional reactions rather than emotional connection becomes a performance. He pushes and pulls and you respond. He disappears and you miss him. He shows up and you get hopeful. But none of it is rooted in real commitment or investment. It's not that he's trying to get closer to you. It's that he wants to keep himself significant in your life. And as long as you keep responding, he gets what he wants without having to give you what you need. People like this are often very good at creating moments that feel intense. They say the right things when they feel you pulling away. They tell you they've been thinking about you. They share a vulnerable story when they sense you're getting distant. But none of those things translate into actual change. It's not consistency, it's performance. And the performance is designed to keep you emotionally hooked. Because as long as you're emotionally available to him, He feels validated. He doesn't need the relationship to grow. He just needs it to stay alive enough to feed his sense of worth. It's incredibly confusing because these moments can feel real. When he opens up, when he reaches out, when he says he misses you, you feel like maybe finally you're getting somewhere. Maybe he's turning a corner, but it never leads to anything solid. There's no follow through, no plans for the future, no depth of effort, just emotional breadcrumbs. Enough to stir your feelings, to give you a rush of hope, and to keep you in the loop. He's not investing in a relationship. He's managing your attachment to him. He wants the reaction, not the responsibility. If he really wanted a relationship, he'd show you through consistent actions. He'd communicate clearly, plan with intention, create space in his life for you to feel secure. But someone who's chasing reactions doesn't do any of that. They operate from impulse. One moment they're charming and engaged, the next they're distant and unresponsive. They don't communicate because they care. They communicate because they don't want to lose control over your emotions. If they sense you're moving on, they'll reappear. Not because they've had a breakthrough, but because they need to reset your attention. It's not love, it's ego maintenance. You start to notice that it's always you who initiates the hard conversations. You're the one asking, "Where is this going?" You're the one trying to get clarity while he floats through the connection, comfortable in the ambiguity. He'll tell you he's not ready, but he likes being around you. He'll say he doesn't want to hurt you, but he keeps doing things that confuse you. He frames himself as honest, but really, he's just vague enough to avoid accountability. Because if he never defines the relationship, he never has to feel like he's failing at it. In this pattern, your emotions become his feedback system. He learns exactly what to do to keep you close without giving you more. When you cry, he comforts you just enough. When you detach, he pulls you back just enough. When you express disappointment, he says the right thing just long enough to calm the storm. But once the emotional intensity fades, everything resets, and you're right back where you started, hopeful but still unsure, close but not connected. He's not building anything with you. He's just checking that you're still watching, still caring, still hoping. You become the one holding the relationship together, even though it was never really a relationship to begin with. It was a cycle of emotional highs and lows designed to keep you engaged. Not with love, but with drama. Not with partnership, but with uncertainty. And the more you invest, the harder it becomes to let go, because you're not just walking away from a person, you're walking away from a story. A story where you believed your patience, your understanding, your love could eventually turn things into something real. But all along, he was never building something real. He was just making sure the spotlight never left him. You keep showing him you're available even when he doesn't deserve your presence. That's what he's learning every time he disappears and comes back, every time he offers the bare minimum and still gets welcomed in. He sees it, he registers it. And over time, it forms a belief that you will always be there no matter how little he gives. Your kindness, your patience, your loyalty, those qualities that should be cherished, become the very things he exploits to maintain his comfort. You think you're being understanding, compassionate, and emotionally mature. But what he's actually learning is that your boundaries are flexible, your standards are negotiable, and your self-respect can be postponed in the name of love. You think that by being steady, you're showing him what a safe, loving relationship looks like. But if someone isn't ready to meet you there, all that steadiness does is give him something to lean on while he avoids growth. He doesn't have to choose you because you've already chosen him again and again, even when he wasn't choosing you back. Every unanswered message, every broken plan, every emotionally detached moment is followed by your continued presence. He gets to leave, get distracted, explore other options, and know that when he comes back, the door will still be open. That's not love. That's access without effort. And every time you respond when he doesn't deserve a reply, every time you say it's okay when it really isn't, every time you rationalize his behavior with empathy instead of reality, you reinforce the idea that he can keep doing this, that there's no urgency, no stakes, no reason to step up. Because your love is there, waiting, steady, loyal. He doesn't have to earn it. He doesn't even have to protect it. He just has to make sure he gives you enough to keep hoping, enough to keep you from walking away completely. It starts with small moments. A late reply that you excuse because he's busy. A lack of planning that you forgive because he says he's overwhelmed. Emotional detachment that you tolerate because you think he's just tired or stressed. You become the one always giving the benefit of the doubt. But the doubt starts to grow, not about him, but about yourself. You begin questioning your own worth. You start wondering if maybe this is just how relationships are. Maybe your expectations are too high. Maybe love really is about staying, even when it hurts. And that's when you start betraying yourself. Not loudly, quietly, subtly. In the way you shrink your needs to accommodate his pace. In the way you stop asking for more because you don't want to push him away. In the way you make excuses for things you would never accept from anyone else. And the worst part? You start thinking that walking away would make you the bad person. You feel guilty for even considering it. You imagine him being hurt, being confused, not understanding why you left, and you carry that guilt like it's your job to manage his emotions. But it's not your job. Your job is to protect your peace, to honor your standards, to stop handing your heart to someone who hasn't shown the capacity to hold it with care. Because every time you stay in a situation that hurts, you teach yourself that pain is the price of connection, that if you just endure enough, wait long enough, love hard enough, it will eventually be worth it. But your value isn't in your ability to endure. It's in your ability to walk away when someone shows you they're not ready, when someone shows you they don't know how to hold your love, your time, your vulnerability with any real weight. And the longer you stay, the more you lose sight of what you actually want. Not attention, not temporary comfort, not breadcrumbs. You want to feel chosen, safe, seen. You want someone who doesn't just return when it's convenient, but someone who shows up consistently because they want to be there. But you can't create that with someone who only gives when they're about to lose you. You can't build security with someone who only values your presence when it's threatened. Love isn't proved in the moments they come back. It's proved in the consistency of how they stay, how they engage, how they commit. And right now, he's not showing that. What he's showing is that he can keep you around without doing the work, that he can rely on your empathy to forgive what your standards should have rejected. And the more you respond, the more he learns that nothing really needs to change because you're still there, still trying, still available,